heard that crash. I hope the glasses were empty.
Pretending this is the 10 years old.
Just waiting for a few more people to join. There we go. Welcome, Andrew, John. I can see your faces. Welcome, guys. If you want to have your camera on, that's fine. If you don't have your camera on, also fine. It helps Dennis and Robin to see your faces and your reactions. So yeah, we encourage the camera. Just a bit of Zoom etiquette while we're waiting. Generally, I'm just going to keep everyone on mute. If there's any questions needed, in the bottom middle, there's a little chat section, so you can drop your questions for any Q&A. And throughout the session, I'll moderate basically and ask Robin and Dennis to kind of jump in. So. Yeah, I'll go through these instructions in a few more minutes. We'll kick off at 5 past. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Oliver. It'd be good to have pictures of people because I'm an old guy and I forget names.
Hey, Nicole.
Dennis, good to see you.
Sorry, Robin. I've been in Teams. I've got back into Zoom now, finding the unmute.
So we'll just give it a few more minutes.
The end.
Good evening.
There again.
Hey, Rogan.
Evening.
Your alarm clock.
Yeah, someone's late. So just waiting one more minute or two for some more people to join, and then we'll kick off. Hello to our app viewers as well. We are live streaming through the Whiskey List app. There's a few people joining through the app tonight as well. So yeah, great that we have a mix of people in the interactive live audience here in Zoom, as well as the app.
By the way, this is not Bruichladdich. This is a water canister. In case anyone gets confused. Then someone said, is that a bottle of Bruichladdich you've got in your hand there?
Robin, that's your story. You stick to it, yeah?
Okay, you just put me out there. Hello, Simon.
Hey, Robin,
how you
can
doing?
you play your bagpipes?
Sorry?
The short answer to that, Mark, is no. A chanter?
Hey, come on.
We're in for a show.
Some music for the interlude.
We get a bit of extra content. That's great.
Ah, well done.
Bravo, mate, bravo.
All right, well, it's 6 past. Yeah, Andrew, I don't know if any more people were joining via the email. I've got a few of you watching through the app as well, but did we want to kick off? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, let's go, Ollie.
All right, sounds good. I will, yeah, if everyone else can just go on mute apart from Dennis and Robin, and that way we just keep the background noise down. Any questions, you just raise it in the chat, and I'll be your moderator tonight. My name is Oliver Maruda. I'm one of the co-founders of the Whiskey List. So we're an online sort of search engine for all the online whiskey retailers, from your big Dan Murphy's and Coles Liquorland right down to your small, independents. There's over 75 independent retailers listed on our site now. And since COVID started, we've been getting involved in these virtual tastings, which are amazing because normally you'd have to go sort of local, and now we can bring it to the comfort of your home. So after your tasting, just please don't drive home. Walk home to the bedroom and stuff. Please take it easy. Lots of water. We are drinking whiskey, over 40% tonight. Take it easy. It's still a school night. Any questions, just drop it into the chat, and I'll ask Dennis and Robin to kind of jump in. For those who are kind of watching through the app, you can also, all the whiskies are available to rate. So if you rate the whiskies into the Whiskey List app or on the website, it kind of gives the brand a good prop, and then we'll show up on the front page and give some love to the brand. If you really enjoy the whiskey, give them 5 stars. I believe that's kind of it in terms of housekeeping. I think now is kind of a wonderful chance to hand over to Robin Cooper, who's the global brand ambassador for Glen Grant, and then you've got Dennis Malcolm, who's a Glen Grant master distiller, all the way from Scotland, joining us tonight. So give a warm welcome to Robin and Dennis.
I take it from here, Oliver.
Please, mate, take it easy.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Robin Cooper. I'm the global brand ambassador for Glen Grant. It's my privilege, honour to have worked with this brand for a few years now, but nothing like our guest here, Mr. Dennis Malcolm, who, I'm just going to give you my own little introduction, Dennis. So I've known you, Dennis, for, I would say, 12 years or something now?
12 plus anyway, Robin, yeah.
Yeah, 12 plus years. So what I will say about you, Dennis, is, the audience, is that Dennis started his career in 1961 at the age of 15, which is quite young to start. And you started as an apprentice cooper.
That's correct.
And you'll know that a cooper is a barrel maker or a barrel repairer. So at the age of 15, Dennis started his career. So that makes you the longest serving distiller in Scotland.
Yeah, I've been lucky.
Right.
Matured well.
Well, anyway, I think that's a compelling fact to kick off with.
Robin, wasn't it true that Dennis was also born on the distillery?
Well, I was going to let him. Say that. I mean, let's hear it from the man himself.
Okay, you're quite right there, Robin. I left school at 15. I didn't have much brains, so I had to go and work for a living. But I started as an apprentice cooper in 1961, April 1961, and I wasn't first Malcolm to start there. My father worked there before me, and my grandfather before that. So the founders founded it in 1840, John and James Grant, and the last one died in 1872 and handed over to the major. So my grandfather worked for the major. So my history of Glen Grant goes back as far as the son of the founder, who was born in 1872. Born on site, yeah. The reason for that is, in these days, distillers needed to keep their employees because they were working around the clock, 24/7. So they gave them all houses. So Glen Grant at that time had about 40 houses. So I was born in a house on site. And nowadays I'm living in the manager's house, which I bought back in 83. So my prediction was that I don't mind being born on site, but I don't want to die on site. It looks like it might happen, but not for a long time, I think. But it's been
you're the master distiller's master distiller, and this is an industry that I think experience is very, very, very important. Albeit, there's been a huge growth of new distilleries and particularly in Australia, which is very exciting. But this year marks 180 years since the distillery was founded. So 1840, when the Grant brothers founded the distillery, and as as a celebration of this achievement, we're launching Arbораlis in Australia before any other market. Could you tell us a bit about the history of the distillery and what Arbораlis represents in the context of this landmark? So let's start with the history of the distillery, short history.
Okay, sure. The John and James Grant founded in 1840, but they were distillers before 1824. That's when the law came into force by the English government saying that had to have a license to distill. They were brought up in Glen area. They moved to Aberlour from 1836 to 1839. Then they wanted to experiment and build their own distillery, so they found this little valley or glen in the Rothes, which is close to the seaport of Garmouth, had its own water supply, and they decided to build a distillery there. And the site is about 50 acres in total, with a beautiful Victorian garden behind it. And you cannot see the distillery when you drive through the office because all you see is majestic trees, Scotch pine, fir, it surrounds the whole place. You're actually within a natural environment. So to mark the launch or commemorate 180 years of distilling, I thought it would be a good idea to make a new expression, and that one is Arbораlis. The name is a Latin name for light coming through the trees. Now, that is actually perfect for Glen Grant because when you see a sunset or a sunrise coming through the trees, these shafts of golden sunlight are sparkling down on you, and that's really very indicative of Arbораlis, So I experimented with some sherry cask and some bourbon cask, and I wanted to blend them together and harmonise all the flavours and aromas that you get from sherry and the bourbon. So I think now is a good opportunity for the people who's with us to fill up a glass with some Arbораlis and drink it, the proofs and the tasting.
Yes, I have a glass of here in my hand. So it's got classic Glen Grant nose, which is very, very aromatic.
Yeah, the DNA, everyone's got DNA, and I sometimes worry about the DNA in this time with this COVID thing just now, because what they're doing is they're swabbing people's throats and noses, and if they do that to me, they'll possibly get a dry, fruity and nutty finish. And I might be Glen Grant again, not me. But that's basically the DNA of Glen Grant. But Glen Grant uses quite a bit of bourbon cask, so you're going to get a toffee vanilla note through it, running through creamy toffee notes. And the sherry gives you that lovely bright golden colour, as you see. And you're getting fruit and raisins, and I think honey in there as well,
Mm-hmm.
There's a little hint of citrus lemon there as well, on the aroma. Now, I keep saying this to everyone, there's no right way or wrong way to nose or taste single malts. I suggest that you do them straight from the bottle at 40%. They're quite strong, so it masks the aroma. Give it a little nose, give it a little taste, and see what you think. Then add a little water. The water reduces the alcohol, softens it in the nose, and releases that lovely honey, fruity aromas.
And the palate.
The palate, you've got a creamy toffee note. You've got dried fruits there as well, and you've got what I think is an apricot. Sort of very tropical fruit there. An apricot, I think, is the one that comes to mind.
I was going to say that the price of the Arbораlis is around about 60 Canadian dollars, I think. So I think it's going to be quite a accessible whiskey, a good quality, but again a good price point. Hi Dennis, is from Rogan. Hi Dennis, I'm sitting here with my mother who introduced me to single malt. She always uses a drop of water when tasting. What would you recommend?
Okay, there's no right way or wrong way, and I always add a little water too, just to soften the alcohol. Yeah, just a little. You've got a big glass there, Robin, and that reduces all the aromas. When you're a young child, and you get some juice to drink. They don't give you concentrated juice. They add water, they dilute it, to make it more flavoursome and more aroma. So it's the very same whiskey.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so moving on, we have a limited. Hi there. That must be your mum, Rogan. Hi, mum.
She's a very wise mum. You know something, Rogan? Rogan, my mum started me drinking before I could walk. Because when I was born in 46, they didn't have teething gel. They put some whiskey on a finger and rubbed your gums.
Right.
I blame her for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, history's got a lot to do with, the story of Scotch whisky and what's unique about, Glen Grant, like other distilleries, is the history and the founders and what their legacy that they left. So we talked about the two founders, the two brothers, John and James, but the distillery the keys of the distillery were handed over approximately 1872 to the Major James Grant, and he was quite a unique character. How's his legacy? What's his legacy? What legacy has left? To making Glen Grant, and the process of how we make Glen Grant.
Yeah, Robin, he had a huge influence on it. The founders were good, John was the guy who stayed at the distillery and looked after the distillery, created that wonderful Victorian garden behind it, with waterfalls and caves and rock and safes built into rocks for a nice drum there. James was the engineer, the politician, the innovator, and he actually created electricity in 1861, 100 years before I started there. This windmills and wave power is not new. Glen Grant did that in 1861. Also being an engineer, he founded the steam railways, because in 1852, the first steam railway came from the port of Lossiemouth into Elgin. He saw then the boom of the industry, so he took railways into Speyside so that he could take his product materials, the raw materials in, and his finished whiskey out. And a point to mention here is, in 1854, it just came to me there, 1854, they were shipping, I found a letter up in the archives, and in 1854 they were shipping Glen Grant single malt to South Africa, Sierra Leone, and Australia. So Glen Grant's not new in Australia, guys. They've been there for a long, long time. You've just left it, you've hidden it. But when the last brother died in 1872, they handed it over to his son James, the Major, as you say. He really revolutionised the distillery. He was the one who was instrumental in putting in these unique purifiers into the distilling process, which changed the character, made it more light and fruity and estery. He was quite a character. He followed in his father's DNA, really. He was the first one to have a Rolls Royce in Scotland. He spent most of his life in India and Africa, big game hunting. So he was quite a character in his own right. But the distillery character was changed completely by him, and in 1873 he doubled the size of the distillery. The distillery was making 210,000 gallons, or 250 barrels a week. He doubled it to 500, and coincidentally, 100 years after that, in 1973, I actually doubled Glen Grant again. So we went up to 1,000 barrels a week, which is 6 million litres a year, It's a lot of fun. So he led the way.
Yeah, no, I was intrigued because I think it's important. I think a lot of people like to know a little bit about the process, how we make Glen Grant. It was interesting. I was in one of these panel or Instagram, live sessions with Glenmorangie the other day, and they were talking about their very tall stills, and they actually mentioned that they mentioned us. They mentioned Glen Grant when they were describing their tall stills, but I think Major James Grant, his very important legacy was the distillation process. Like you mentioned, the toll stills and the purifiers. Because can you explain a little bit how that makes that kind of very sort of soft, gentle, highly aromatic? It's very unique to Glen Grant, this.
Yeah, it is actually. I've got something up above behind me here. Maybe everyone can see it here, can they? Yeah. There is your stills. Glenmorangie have got tall stills. You seeing them there, guys, eh? Yep.
Yeah.
Glenmorangie have tall stills. Other stills are maybe about a foot lower than Glenmorangie, but the boiling vapour, alcoholic vapour, goes up over the swan neck down the lye pipe, and then it goes into a condenser normally in 99% of the industry. He fitted a purifier, which is an empty cylinder. The vapours go in midway. We run cold water over the head of it, so when the hot boiling vapours rise, the light ones rise, hit the cold head, the heavier ones reflux back into the still, this little pipe here. Only the lighter ones go over to be condensed. That gives it a much more lighter, fruitier estery spirit. So he changed the character of Glen Grant for the better and forever. Because I still it that way.
And of course, we have the likes of Jim Murray now recognising the quality of Glen Grant. I mean, the Whiskey Bible, and I have a copy.
Yeah.
But it's about 400 or 500 pages of about 4,000 or 5,000 whiskies are evaluated. Half of that Bible is dedicated to Scotch whiskey, where, of course, Glen Grant's hitting some pretty top awards. We don't have any. I don't think we have any evaluations yet for our Borealis, but certainly the 10 years old, which is our next one.
Yeah, the next one's a 10-year-old. Let's just have a look at the 10-year-old when we're speaking about Jim Murray then. The 10-year-old is got sherry and bourbon mixed together. It's also a deep golden colour. And
just a second, it's important, I think, to note that the use of sherry is less and less these days, and quite often distilleries, when they'll put out their, let's say, the entry level expression, will be quite often 100% ex-bourbon these days. And I think the fact that we're using a bit of sherry makes Glen Grant possibly stand out somewhat. Would you say that?
Yes, I totally agree with you. And you know something, Robin? The bourbon barrels from America are a godsend for the industry. They come into the country 59, so everyone is using bourbon since then. But prior to that, they were all using sherry. So really, the Arboralis using a high percentage of sherry, blending and harmonising with the bourbon, is going back to their roots in a way, really. So that's it gives you beautiful sweets, raisin, fruity notes to it.
And the other thing is, I think that, and this speaks to the DNA of Glen Grant, which I described that very aromatic. You described the fruity nose, but you also get the barley sugar. That malted barley notes in Glen Grant.
Yeah, we call them barley notes, right enough. Jim Murray calls them steely barley notes, and it certainly comes through quite clearly with it. Mr. Jim Murray voted 10-year-old in 2013 for 6 consecutive years the best 10-year-old single malt in the industry. Malt in the industry for 6 consecutive years. Now, the first year I thought, it's just a writer giving me an accolade, The second year, well, other people have had it 2 years, but when I got it 3 years succession, I then started getting grey hair, guys, because I was starting to worry then, if I made one minute change, he would notice it and mark me down. So it went on for 6 years, which is very, very good. It just means that I've done my job consistently for 6 years. Consistent quality is the name of the game.
We
don't have a lot of liquid, but I think we're on the road to building up our reputation as being a top quality single malt. Sorry, Oliver.
We've got a couple of questions coming in through the app. 2 questions. I'll ask them both and then you can answer it. They're pretty simple. Where do the sherry casks come from and how long's your fermentation time?
Well, that's quite easy. The fermentation time is 48 hours all the time. We don't change it. We keep it steady because longer and shorter fermentations does change the character of the product. So our fermentation is 48 hours. Our sherry casks come from Spain, and the ones that we think Glen Grant performs better with is Oloroso sherry. So that's where we come from.
And we got a question from John in the chat. He goes, does a 10-year-old become an 11-year-old next year? So who wants to take that question?
I'll take it. It's not going to be an 11-year-old. We're going to stay. We have the Majors Reserve Arboralis in between it and the 10-year-old. We're keeping that age statement 10-year-old there all the time.
And aged whiskey can only mature in the wood, in the oaked cask. So once you have a bottle and it's you've had that bottle on your shelf for 10 years, it won't be 10 years matured. It only matures in the cask.
That is correct. And my advice to that person with that question is, that's why we have corks in these bottles, you know. Once it's made and in the bottle, get it out of there as quick as you can because it doesn't get any better. Throw the cork away.
Well, I hope that,
I've never had a bottle that's been on my shelf for 10 years.
10 minutes.
10
No, 10 hours. If you're keeping good company, it shouldn't last that long. And the thing is, different whiskies mature at different times. So, I mean, 10 years is really good for Glen Grant. It's very well balanced, rounded, complex. All the flavours are there. So, I think that's the right age for it just now.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to the next question. It's all about quality control, consistency, quality control, and that's really your job, Dennis, is to make sure that quality is as high as it can be and as consistent as it can be year after year after year. Can you expand on a little bit on the process behind that and what it means to the distillery to be able to maintain those standards?
Yeah, I think it's crucially important. I think that there's only one thing that keeps me doing what I'm doing is consistent quality. It has to be consistent quality. What we're making today should be good for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Another 60 years from now, you, Robin, will be saying, I'm still making it the same way as Dennis Malcolm made it 60 years ago. That is good. We have our own water supply, which is limestone, sandstone, and we have our own supply there for water, so we're guaranteed to have the same water all the time. We are very traditional distillers. We are uniquely with our purifiers, and we have wooden fermenters. We have our own quality control department at Glen Grant, so we check everything, the water, the wood, every cask, you know, we have 108,000 casks in store. Every cask that is taken and dumped or emptied for bottling is checked for colour and aroma, because we are fanatical about quality. And doing that means that we will not let a cask into that bottling which is maybe just a fraction not ready for bottling, you know. So we've got to be careful. And the nice thing about it is we make it on site, we mature it on site, and since 2013 we've built a bottling hall and we bottle every bottle of Glen Grant on site since 2013. That's a huge cost because the glassmakers are down in the south of Scotland beside Glasgow, almost in England. The cardboard and cartons and all that stuff is made down there, so it's all going to be shipped up to Glen Grant. We then bottle it there with our own guys, so we control the quality of everything. And then once it's bottled, we ship it back down to Glasgow to the big ports to ship it abroad to Australia, America, and everywhere. So it's a huge cost that nobody else does. So that is a cost of consistent quality.
Yeah, no, I think it's also important to note that of all the distilleries in Speyside, I mean, you're talking about Macallan, Aberlour, Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, so on and so forth. Glen Grant's the only distiller that bottles every drop at the distillery.
That's correct. Since 2013, in the region of 4 million, 5 million bottles every year is made on site, bottled on site. Everything's controlled on site, you know. So I think,
So I was going to, we're going to finish off with the 18 years old, which, well, this has a little bit of a story. This is very rare. We don't produce a lot of this. But what's unique about this is, well, not just the quality of the liquid, but it was recognized again by Jim Murray as being the best Scotch whiskey, not just the best single malt or the best Speyside, the best Scotch whiskey overall. So we're talking about blended Scotch, single malt Scotch, blended malt, single grain, blended grain. So of the 5 Scotch whiskey categories, this was number 1. So we're going to have this. This is going to be our final one, and I have a little glass of it here. I hope you all do. But we'll taste this as the final sort of the unicorn, if you like, of the Glen Grant range. So take it away, Dennis.
Just
Okay,
before
Robert.
we
A little bit of a
we got one question come in just before we jump on the 18. Simon asks, how many markets is the Glen Grant sold in globally?
oh, wow. That's not an easy. That's not a question for me, but the comparison of 180 different markets, you know. But I do know that our biggest market is Italy. It has been for 40, 50 years, you know. Well, since the 60s anyway. And then we have France, Germany, South Africa, America. You know, I think Campari did the right thing when they bought Glen Grant from the big Pernod, Chivas Pernod. They did not release Glen Grant thinly over the ground into every country in the world. They decided to build a stable foundation and launch it in 1 or 2 countries every year. So they're doing it slowly and constructively, because the foundations of Glen Grant were laid by my ancestors 180 years ago, and all I'm doing is building on that. So I'm really pleased they're building up the range slowly and positively like that.
I would also add that another market, if you like, that we're investing in is the duty-free market. And so we call it travel retail. And so it's a good opportunity for us to build brand awareness, build the visibility of the brand. So if you're traveling, I mean, not many people are traveling right now, so it's not a good situation. But you will find Glen Grant displays in a lot of the airport duty-free stores across the world, and that's good for us because it, as I say, it builds the awareness and the visibility of the brand, and people often are looking for a bottle of whiskey that they haven't seen in their local liquor store. So that's a big investment, a big focus from us right now to get our sort of global name out there. Back to the 18 years old, if I may. I had mentioned that this had scored the top Scotch whiskey 3 years in a row. This is the third Glen Grant we're tasting. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the 18 years old, Dennis?
Yeah, it gave me a big problem, the 18-year-old, because you, Robin, and all the market people wanted something much older, and we didn't have a huge amount of old stocks. So 5 years ago, I looked at the casks that we had, the stock we had, and I could have blended in a lot of sherry and made it more like 18-year-old of Glenfiddich and Glenlivet and Glenmorangie and all them, but I didn't. I decided to go back, to go forward, because the youngest one is all American bourbon remade hogsheads. So I did the same with the 18-year-old. And if you sit the 18-year-old glass beside the 10 or the Arbor, you'll find it's much lighter in colour. And every time we bottle it, so we maybe bottle, I don't know, maybe 500,000 bottles a time, it'll have a different colour because it's natural colour. We do not add any caramel to colour correct with this one. It's just as it goes into the cask and comes out the cask, it's reduced. It's a lovely, lovely bright golden colour because of the bourbon influence there, and it's rich, more floral to fruity note. on the nose, with oaky overtones and a little hint of baking spices there.
Yeah, I definitely get that bar again. That DNA of Glen Grant, that fruity, that. Well, in this it's more floral, as you say, but you definitely get that, that barley sugars. I mean, I think Jim Murray says in the Bible, not a malt molecule out of place.
Yeah, well, he voted it the best one for the last 4 years now, and I really quite pleased with that. But not the best in the world this last 2 years, because he's been picking American whiskies and such like, Canadian whiskies, but we're still number one in the Scotch whisky industry. So, and I don't add water to this one because I think it's so delicate and elegant in its own right. And when you taste it, you'll find you'll get this malty caramel toffee. It's like putting a nice toffee caramel in your mouth and letting it melt slowly with your saliva. That's a creamy toffee caramel note I get.
We've got a question from John, a follow-up question. If an 18-year-old whiskey is bottled at 18 years old, how do you make it taste the same? So all the variations over the intervening years of a barrel, rainfall, water supplies, barley, how do you keep consistency between the 18-year-olds?
It's all to do with cask selection. You select the cask, individual cask, and you blend all that 18-year-old cask together. And the 18-year-old Glen Grant has got a lot of toffee vanilla from the bourbon cask, because there's bourbon casks involved in the majors, Arboralis, the 10, the 12, and the 18 is all American wood, pre-made hogsheads and bourbon barrels. So that's how you keep it consistent.
But then we'll have, when we're selecting casks, we'll make sure that the casks are within the flavour profile, aroma profile. So cask selection is absolutely key, and as is, making sure that the formulas are right, that we're pulling out those barrels that maybe we think don't fit that profile. So we have to be very selective, and that's a huge part of the job, is making sure that consistency is always as consistent as it can be.
Oh yeah, and if you go back to what I said earlier on about quality, every cask that we empty when it's matured, whether it's a 5-year-old, a 10, a 12, an 18-year-old, they are nosed and checked for colour and aroma. If it's not suitable, we don't dump that cask, we reject it. We're passionate about keeping consistent quality. So that goes out of the system.
It's a bit like building a stone wall. I mean, you've got lots of different shape and size stones, but it's how you put them all together, I guess.
That's correct. And it's important to do that at all times.
John says send the rejects over to him, please.
Here, why do you think I've been here so long? No, he needs to come over and see for himself. I'd be delighted to show him how.
But I think John raises a really good question. Obviously, you've got certain distilleries who do single cask. So once that cask is gone, it's gone entirely. Then you've got your batched releases, which Glen Grant does for consistency, and a lot of distilleries do. And then some distilleries send all their whiskey to make a blend, like your Johnny Walkers. So basically, those are kind of the main variants. But yeah, Rogan goes, "What's your favourite dram?" to Dennis.
Well, I don't know anything else. I do know other things, but I think Glen Grant is my favourite. But I tend to change it as we go along. And just now, Arboralis seems to be hitting all the spots for me just now. It's clean, it's crisp, it's fruity, it's got honey notes, it's got rich fruit notes. It's got a long finish to it, really lovely, soft, delicate finish to it. So I would say the Arboralis is the flavour for me just now.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Your mother's got very wise lady, so you listen to her all the time. and I'm beginning to wonder if that is your mother, she doesn't look to be your mom.
Look it on. How's the weather up there at the moment, Dan?
Well, 2 days ago it was about 25 degrees C. It was tropical weather. But yesterday it got colder and wetter, and so it went from 25 down to last night it was 7 degrees C. But that is fantastic for us, Robin, because that's how we live and work. Because we need Glen Grant in its own. Just Glen Grant distillery needs 2 million litres of water a week for production, which is captive to make single malt, and 18 million litres a week to cool the vapour to turn it into liquid. So 20 million a week for one distillery. And Speyside is 50%, roughly 50% of the whole whisky industry in Scotland. So there's about 50 distilleries in Speyside. So we need to pray for rain as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, people go to Scotland and they say, "Oh, it's a beautiful country, but it rained all the time." And the reality is that without the rain, we wouldn't be able to make our whiskey.
That is very true. It's important, and we have our own water supply as well. So our ancestors were very shrewd in doing that, you know. And the thing is, you know, there's the angel share. Nobody speaks about it. This beautiful product evaporates at 2% per annum. Now, you just take Glen Grant, 1,000 barrels a week, 6 million litres a year, 1,000 barrels. Divide the 6 million by 2%, and do you know how many barrels a year are going up to the angels? 1 week's supply, 1 week's production. So there's 1,000 barrels of Glen Grant up there. And there's a justification for me being an elder in the church for the last 40 years. I want to get up there and get that angel's share.
Oh, looking forward to the afterlife.
I am hoping you don't go there before me, Phil.
Hope so too.
Yeah, we've got another couple of questions coming in. If any other people have them, please send them through. But Andrew raises, do you still do tastings up at the bridge using the stream water to rinse the glass in between? Obviously before COVID, is that still a thing?
Yeah, that's part of the history of Glen Grant and the heritage of Glen Grant. I like taking visitors up there and taking a dram out of the safe and built into the rocks. And can I tell you, it tastes completely different there, because if you had an Arboralis out of the safe, it was lovely and cool with the stream water, and then come down to my elbows and drink a rum on there, it's like chopping cheese. It's all about the atmosphere and the people that you're drinking, where you're drinking it. So, yes, it's a lovely way to do it.
No, that's great. Got a question from Glen. This is a really good one, and might be for Andrew or Mark to kind of jump in as well. It seems single malt in Australia has become more affordable and many new entrants over the years. Why is the market improving for the drinker so much? Is it the exchange rates or just more competition?
I'm not a marketing guy, but I think young people now want to experiment more. They don't want to know it's just Glen Grant, Glenlivet, Glen Sparkless, Glenette, whatever. They want to know why it's different and the reasons it's different. So that they want more knowledge. They're always thirsty for knowledge. So I think that helps as well. But I'll leave the marketing guys to tell you why it's important.
Well, if I may chip in, I mean, I think the Scottish whisky industry is quite a cyclical industry. And when it's cheap to produce whiskey, the industry will produce, distillers will be cranking out more liquid, filling more casks, even building more warehousing. And then you'll get the down cycle when it will become more expensive and distillers will produce less. So it's possible that in Australia right now, there's probably a small glut that's going into the Australian market, bringing the prices down somewhat, more entrants into the market, more brands and more competition. I would imagine that Glenlivet and Glenfiddich are probably, fighting for share. But I think globally the trend as pricing has been it's been going up. When you look at brands like Macallan, the price seems to be going ever upwards and upwards and upwards. But I don't know, Mark and Andrew may have a better answer than I do.
No, it definitely. The reason, I guess, is the category in Australia is one of the fastest growing categories, and it's one of the most exciting categories. So therefore, there's a lot of competitors coming in, a lot of distributors picking up distillery drops and bringing them out to Australia. So at the base range, there is some more competitive pricing, but the actual average price of single malt is increasing. It's right increasing more in value than volume. As people start experimenting more, they start moving their way up. We've got a small batch of the Glen Grant 15-year-old coming out this year, which we're pretty excited about. And the 18-year-old, we get a limited allocation, but it really sells out really fast. So whilst there's entry-level malts, there's also a lot of higher-level malts as well.
Don't you think that the young people now are aspiring to quality and not quantity? Is that not that's what I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But also remember that single malt is still a lot more expensive than your premium blends like Shivers and Johnny Walker. So it still is a step up.
I was also going to add that the whiskey malt consumers or whiskey consumers are when they would be perhaps 10, 15 years ago, maybe married, very loyal to one brand. I think now they're beginning to try different, or they're exploring and they're discovering, and they're discovering new brands. So they may have started with Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, Macallan, possibly Glenmorangie. Perhaps now they're going beyond that and looking to find a whiskey that they haven't seen before, something new, something they perhaps share within their group. There's many more whiskey tasting clubs around, not just in Australia but across the globe. People are coming together. Let's not forget that whiskey's very, very much a bonding drink. It's connecting people, and these whiskey tasting clubs, what they're doing is their members are going out looking for strange bottlings or rare bottlings, exclusive bottling, limited bottlings, or brands that they've never come across before, and then they're bringing those back and they're sharing that whiskey or that bottle with people. And I think it's amazing that nowadays, most markets are actually producing their own whiskies. Look at Australia. Tasmania have a couple of distilleries down there that are now putting out very high quality products that are competing with the likes of Scotch whisky category.
You guys all speak. I'm sure that the people who's listening as well all speak about two things, two generic things: whisky and Scotch. When they're doing their whisky clubs, I would never say whisky or Scotch. Whisky is generic. The Scotch Whisky Association is generic for every type of whisky. They make whisky in Canada, America, even in England, Robert. They make it all over the world, so it's generic. And Scotch is an Americanism. Now, don't jump down my throat about that. It's an Americanism. So when I blend, I like to say single malt or blend, because single malt is like an individual distillery, and a blend is a gathering of them all together. So it's a group. So single malts are like people; they're all different, and distilleries are like people as well, all different. Narrows it down a bit and gets people to speak more about the individual distillery rather than Scotch. Yeah. Anyone else got questions? How many ladies are watching today? None?
I think we had Nicole before, but she had to say her apologies, had to jump off. I think we've got a few more on the app as well.
Okay. can I ask the people who have been sitting in which expression do they like the best? Why?
Which one do you like?
The Arboralis. I thought it was just a lovely,
Arboralis.
Also, can people be unmuted?
lovely house whiskey. It's light, it's approachable. You can just take that on any time of day or night.
Dennis, we love the Arboralis, I think. Lovely.
Well, you need to get yourself over to Glen and go up to the sea through the gardens and enjoy the Arboralis there. Because one word for Arboralis, it's classy or it's delicate. Very delicate.
It's you could even have it for breakfast whiskey. It's really good.
Over your cornflakes.
That's definitely Rogan's mother.
That's confirmed it. This is not working out the way I thought.
That's a great answer because I'm after we stop. I'm going to have my breakfast anyway.
I love the 18-year-old. I just like the body, the linger, the warmth. It just, for me, it's everything a whiskey, a single malt should be. You know, just some size, it's got sort of the aromas, but it just sits in the chest a bit longer than the Arboralis. The Arboralis is lovely, but I think the 18-year-old just sits and lingers that bit longer, and it just brings that beautiful feeling around it. Yeah, for me, the 18-year-old that's a special.
Yeah, a really nice soft mouthfeel and long lingering aftertaste. Yeah.
Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I sometimes call them the family of Glen Grant because the Arboralis is a young one. That's the baby.
Yes.
The 10-year-old, believe it or not, who's 10 is a father because that's the more balanced and complex one. And you will find strands of the 10-year-old in the Arboralis, in the 12 going up the way, and the 18. The 18 is the mum. That's the elegant, sophisticated one, the delicate one. That's exactly what you're saying, Robert. The 12-year-old to me is a student. You know, most families get kids when they go to university. Now they don't do what they're told. They're told advised by their mums and dads, do this, do that, but they do the opposite. The student, the 12-year-old, has got that spicy finish to it. You know, quite different from the rest of them.
Is there any other questions? I think we're kind of getting very close to time up, guys, and I know it's getting quite late in both time zones from our special guests. Any other questions, guys? We've got Andrews just said, have you tasted any individual bottlings that have made you shiver and think, I wish they did not have that cask? I've not tasted the Gordon MacPhail 18. Oh, it's a complicated question, mate.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to answer that question because individual casks are just like people, individuals. They're quite distinctive, and some like them, some don't. Whereby when you're doing an expression like Arboralis or Glen Grant 10, you're blending hundreds of the same age of casks together to get that consistent quality. So an individual cask is an experience, but it's not the marker for the quality of that brand.
And of course, a lot of the Gordon MacPhail stock will be not aged at our distillery, perhaps. It will be aged elsewhere. Some of it will be very old, aged in sherry, where maybe it's aged too long, perhaps. Would you say so, Dennis? Some of the Gordon MacPhail bottlings, some of the older ones?
Yeah. The thing is, at Glen Grant, I forgot to say this to everyone, Glen Grant, we have dunnage warehouses. That's very traditional. One cask stood on top of the other, 3 high on the bottom floor, 2 on the second floor and the third floor. Majority of distillers now are on high-rise blocks, maybe 11 high. It's making more corks into the same space. So we use traditional dunnage, which we think is maybe the best way to mature. It's a traditional way. Gordon MacPhail mature most people's whiskies in their own warehouses. And whiskey, single malt whiskies, whether it's Glen Grant or any other brand, I think they're like professional football players. They get to a certain level or age and they plateau off and they don't get any better. They maybe deteriorate a little bit or stay there because the wood influences the alcohol too much, you know. So really, it does have that effect on it. So that's true what you're saying, Robin. And that to me is a little bit like marriage, remember, because when you're married or start, it's fantastic, you do everything for the first few years. And once you go to 40, 50 years like me, the wife dominates you, so therefore the wood dominates the spirit. I'm joking, guys.
We can say this in Australia. we're all right talking about these things with the Aussies.
Thanks, guys. I'm just conscious of time. I've got the room booked to 7 p.m, so it will basically cut out in the next couple minutes. So, yeah, if there's no more questions, massive thank you to both Dennis and Robin for jumping on the call, doing the virtual tasting. 3 amazing whiskies, and yeah, some great questions coming through. Some as well on the app. Thank you all the app watchers as well, those who just wanted to watch and not participate. Yeah, thanks everyone for your time tonight. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Robin. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you all at Glen Grant.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much indeed.
You bring your mum with you, Robin.
Thanks
You
everyone.
have to, Rogan. You have to, man.
Yeah, it's like, lock it in.
Oh, I've never seen a man look so embarrassed.
Oh, well, yeah. Thanks very much.